Hello and welcome. I am Margaret Esfahani here with Shireen Charda from the Tampa Bay Brahma Kumaris, and Shireen in this series is going to share with us soul fitness. Welcome, Shireen.
Hi, Margaret.
How are you doing today?
Good.
Wonderful. Please share with us a little bit about why soul fitness.
So soul fitness, I started as a series to help me personally. And so I started writing when I was very sick. For the last few years, I went through several ailments like cancer and things like that.
Yes.
And I remember, having to do a lot of physical, upkeep of the body. And one of the physical upkeeps of the body was, having a regular exercise practice like walking or something.
Yes.
And when I started doing that, I met a lot of people who were into real fitness.
Yes.
And they were really committed about their fitness, like they had personal trainers and they did everything to make sure that their body was fit. And I was thinking, wow, look at the amount of time they're spending
Yes.
on their physical fitness.
Yes.
And I remember at that point one person telling me, when you're young, you can get away with everything you eat, you can eat whatever you want, you can do whatever you want. But once you grow older, it's not going to work. You would have to get on a fitness regimen. And I had to do it too. Where before I started soul fitness, before I started my spiritual practice, I was very physically fit. Like I used to run and I was a runner and all of those things. And after I started my spiritual practice, somehow that, my spiritual practice took center stage, and the other one was, I used to work out once in a while, go to the gym and stuff, but it was not anything serious. And so now I had to do both. I had to do both physical and spiritual. And so I started combining both.
Very good. So it wasn't just one or the other.
Yes.
We just left one to go and just do all physical, and then all of a sudden I'm going to just focus on my prayer and my spirituality.
Yes.
Okay.
So I started doing both. And so
Okay.
while I was doing my physical, like walking or other exercises, then I started practicing these spiritual practices,
Okay.
which I called them drills.
Okay.
Like a drill, like you do this and you do this and then you do this. So in the same way, they were like set exercises that I was doing. And that's when I started thinking about soul fitness.
Excellent. So you were physically exercising, but at the same time keeping your mind intact with your spirituality and
Yeah.
saying, wait a minute, I can do this at the same time.
Yes.
I don't have to give up one to do the other.
Yes, I don't have to give up one to do the other. Yes.
Well, very good. So tell us a little bit about combining that. How do you bring that together?
And so I designed 50 exercises.
Okay.
And we might do 50, we might do less, we might do more, depending on, I'm going to use you as a guinea pig.
Okay, I'm free. I've tried all kinds of exercises of all sorts, so I'm very happy to do all of that.
And so I walk you through. And so what happens is that just like in an exercise,
Yes.
there are warm-ups.
Yes,
In soul fitness, we have warm-ups,
great.
which really warm us up into a much more spiritual thing. And then in a spiritual exercise, we have you do this, you first relax, and then you think this, then you think that. So it's all about our thoughts.
Okay,
Because when you think about the difference between physical and spiritual,
yes,
I really am because I think. As a spiritual being, I am because I think. And our thoughts are central to bringing us into soul fitness.
Okay. Can you be a little bit more specific? I am because I think. So define for me a little bit about the think part.
That's what René Descartes said, the French philosopher, mathematician. Before I started my practice, I used to really be into him and Nietzsche, actually.
Yes.
So what happened was when there are two kinds of things in the world. First, then I'll tell you where thinking comes from. There are two kinds of things in the world. There are spiritual things and there are material things.
Okay.
And material things are like matter, like this house,
Yes.
all right? But there's a distinction, because in a house, what happens in a house is this house is about 20 years old.
Yes.
And 20 years ago, it wasn't a house, it was matter. The windows were separate, it was part of a tree, the door was part of something else, a part of a tree, and the brick and, all of those was something else. So they all got together as, they were put together by someone, and they were shaped and called matter.
Okay.
And they were said, this is this shape, so let's give it a name called house.
Okay.
And what happens is, let's say 200, 300 years from now, this house will not be in this shape.
Right.
It will be it'll go back to matter.
Yes.
And so it's very temporarily, because it's in a particular shape, it's given a particular name, and we say it's a house and it exists as a thing, but it's a very temporary existence.
Okay.
That's very different from spiritual things.
Okay.
Spiritual things like soul, like ourselves, our spirits, or I, the spirit, which I'll get into that in a minute, the subtle distinctions, are always in existence. It's not like we got love together, peace together, consciousness together, thinking together, and put it all in one and said, that is soul.
Okay.
Or that is spiritual. No. It always exists as a spirit in that shape.
Okay.
As a soul, it always exists. Whereas matter keeps changing, once it's here, once it's not here. It's very temporary existence.
So the soul doesn't change. The soul is constant. It's the same 300 years ago, a million years ago. It's the same today, and its composition is the same going forward in the future.
Right. It's a whole. It's a whole. You can't break it down like you can break down a house.
Okay.
On the other hand, the body which we are living in,
Yes.
like the soul is in this body.
Correct.
This body, like the house, can be broken down.
Correct.
It can say these are arms, there are eyes, and we have, body part doctors, someone who takes care of eyes, someone who takes care of arms, someone who takes care of teeth. So because we can break down into that, but 40 years ago, 50 years ago, this body as Shireen did not exist. 50 years from now, it's not going to exist.
Correct.
And so it's come together as a particular body, and we give it a name called Shireen, or we give it a name called Margaret.
Yes.
But it's very temporary.
Yes.
And so the soul is even beyond this temporary existence as a body. And so the body has a lifespan, but the soul is eternal. And that's the distinction. So there's spiritual matter and spiritual things, and spiritual things are things that don't have a lifespan, they're eternal, and they always exist.
Okay.
They always exist, and they're not put together. There are a bunch of stuff put together. It's a whole.
Okay.
It's a whole that always exists. And that spiritual thinks. That spiritual soul, thinks.
So that's very interesting, because just from a typical person's perspective, I know I have a body, and I know that, I come into life, and I know that there's going to be an end to my life. And so that makes perfect sense, that there is a beginning and, sort of a middle where I'm at currently right now. And then, of course, a physical end to my physical existence. So share with me, if you can, an example of how the soul or spirit is known. How can one sense that it's there through different experiences?
Let me share one thing. About 22, 23 years ago, I was born in India and I came here.
Yes.
And what happened was, when I was born, I was in at that point in Hyderabad. I was born in a small town close to Hyderabad, and in India. and there was some kind of a curfew going on, some kind of agitation, something was going on. So there was a curfew going on, and so my mom couldn't get to the hospital,
Oh my goodness.
and so I was born at home.
Okay.
And so, and a lot of my aunts were there
Yes.
because I was born at home, and so I had this very public,
Oh my
Which
goodness.
really, I used to tell my mom, I was like, really, did you have to do this? Because every time they met me, they used to talk about it.
Yes.
Oh, we saw you being born, kind of thing.
Welcome to the world, Shireen. It's a big welcome party for you.
Yes. And so I didn't see some of these aunts for a long time.
Yes.
And then, so the first time I went back, and so this was, I started reading about cell regeneration.
Okay.
And cell regeneration talks about how that cells in your body regenerate. It's a known scientific fact that certain elements of your body, for example, your heart or your skin, or they, every day a few million cells die and a few million cells are born.
Correct.
And every day that happens.
Correct.
And so, and after a certain point, there's not a single cell which was the same as, let's say, a few years ago.
Yes.
And so, and some, and that's not even few years. For some organs like the heart, it's few months because
Correct.
it's such an active organ.
Yes.
Every few months, it totally regenerates itself, and things like the liver, every few months, it totally regenerates itself. I don't know where I heard, but I heard in 7 years, there's pretty much very few cells in the body that are 7 years ago. So I met my aunts, these people that were, through the
There.
my welcome party to this world.
Yes.
And when I went back, and I just read about cell regeneration, and I went back and I met them, and they totally knew me. And I was thinking, there's not one cell of the body that was there when I was born or the last time I saw them, but they knew me. And they recognized me, and they were happy to see me, and they were like, oh, you were so cute when you were little. And I'm thinking, thanks. And all of those things, but how do they recognize me? There was something that is consistent. In spite of the cells leaving and coming, the body regenerating itself, there's something that is constant. We remember things from more than 7 years ago. We remember things from more than 14 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yes.
Is because that constant is that soul, that animating force. And I am that animating force, that soul. I am that soul in this body.
So would you say then that your aunts that welcomed you into this world, even though they don't see a physical Shireen on a regular basis, that they still know a spiritual Shireen?
Yes, yes. The soul, they knew. They knew that there was the soul, they had a certain characteristic, certain looks. And it's odd, isn't it? Like, I used to watch some scar, and I used to think, oh wow, it's regenerating itself, and a few years later it's coming back as a scar. So imagine how much of what we are is actually spiritual.
Yes.
And then that spiritual energy helps regenerate the body.
And so, Shireen, for some of us, that's a big concept to grasp, because one is very easy. When you talk about the skin regeneration, I mean, we see it as we're aging, that our skin is not as tight, and, as women, we use a lot of products to, increase our look. But what do I need to do to have sort of a spiritual acceptance or a spiritual understanding? Is it like a trust or a belief?
You use the word
Okay.
acceptance.
Okay.
Acceptance, acceptance, acceptance. It can't be that when we die, this is it. It's just, you don't need to be spiritual, you don't need to be religious. It's beyond religion. What I'm saying is beyond religion. It is a fact that there's something there before, something there after. It's just not dust to dust. It's not just gone.
Right.
And so we have to accept that. We have to accept that I am a soul. And I'm in this body, and I'm a spiritual being having a human experience through this body.
Fantastic. I really like how you put that into perspective by saying that we have to accept that we are spiritual. Just as we have to accept that we are a physical person and we have to take care of the physical part of our existence. We accept that fact that either I'm overweight or I have diabetes or whatever issue needs to be taken care of from a physical perspective. And so I accept that. So accepting the fact that I'm also a spiritual soul, that I have spirituality, and that spirituality transcends time, that it is separate, makes a lot of sense. And so I appreciate you sharing that information. I can't wait to dive in even further to get more information on how I can, for myself personally, but for all those out there, strengthen our soul. So in that respect, I'd like to thank Shireen for her introduction to soul fitness. At the same time, I just want to recap that when we're talking about soul fitness, we are talking about a spirituality, something that transcends time, something that is not tactile, but something that we accept to be true. So join us again. We're going to dive in and strengthen our soul. Thank you so much.